Hello and welcome to the GamesCreed podcast. I'm your host, Andres Place. We are joined by a very special guest today, Mary, aka Mary the Dead Man. Also joining us from GamesCreed, an editor as well. Mary, how you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really great. I was really looking forward to this podcast because it's the Halloween podcast, the Spooktober podcast, and I don't know if you like them, but I remember in TV series and shows like that, they always have like the Halloween themed podcast, and I always look forward to those.
I love a show that has I don't really care about a Christmas episode. Like, it does not bother me. But a Halloween episode, I'm like, yeah, I'm all
Yeah.
about it. Like, I want like weird filters. I want all of that sort of stuff. I want it to be really corny, like Scream style.
Yeah. Yeah, when like the even the intro is different, or like I remember the Simpsons episodes that had like the
Yeah.
Halloween special that they've been doing it for a while now. Yeah, it's really great. I really do like this time of year. But I haven't really started this year to play too many scary games yet. I'm waiting to play Silent Hill 2, but the past few years, at least the past 3 years, I've been playing yearly like Resident Evil, 2, 3, and 4. The remakes,
Yeah.
and a bunch of all other games. But anyway, before I get ahead of myself, I wanted to ask you because you said you love horror, and I have a complex relationship with it. But I wanted to ask what was like the first when you were like younger in horror in games? Like, what's your best memory of it? Like,
So when I was younger, I was a complete baby. I couldn't handle horror at all. I didn't even like the cave sections of like the Crash Bandicoot games because it was too dark. And I was like, no, I'm not
Yeah.
playing it. Like, my cousin can play it and I'll just watch. And I was like that for ages. And it wasn't until I got a bit
Yeah.
older that I started watching Let's Plays. And I loved watching Let's Plays of horror games because I liked seeing other people get scared. It made me feel brave. And it wasn't until like maybe 5 or 6 years ago that I actually started playing them myself quite a lot, and I absolutely love it.
Right.
I feel like the most fun I can have playing a game alone, like if I'm not with any friends, I'm not online, is playing a horror game, because I know that like my heart's going to be pumping. It's so exciting. It's so like I love it when I'm like so scared. That fear when like you get on the back of your neck and you feel like there's someone in the room behind you and you have to turn around really slowly so like you can see the door. And I love it. I hate it, but I love it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, yeah, I think you're the perfect guest for this podcast then. because like I was the same way when I was younger. I would be like really scared of. I remember. I think I have this vague memory of somebody playing Silent Hill, but I would be scared of everything. Like I would be scared of even Mortal Kombat. Even when the graphics were like pixelated, I was scared by the gore and like the fatalities and stuff like that. So it also took me a while. It took me a while to get around to them. But you say which were your Let's Plays? Which were the ones that drew you in the most?
I used to love watching people play Outlast. I've since played it myself, and I actually think I got more scared watching it than playing it, because when I was playing it I just got cross. I was just like, I've been caught again. Great. But yeah, I love Outlast. I used to like the Five Nights at Freddy's games. I was like a serial Five Nights at Freddy's solver. I thought I had it figured out. I didn't, but I thought I did. So yeah, I loved those. In terms of like games I play, I actually started with the Resident Evil franchise, which I think is like I'm the wrong age for that. I feel like people maybe 10 years older than me who grew up with like 1 to 4, I would say, they love Resident Evil. And then maybe like young people now who 7 and 8 have come out when they've been first getting into horror. But I started with Resident Evil 5, which is, it's not the best one. Like, it's fun. It's not scary. But then from there, I went and played the first one, which is quite a lot scarier, and it really scared me when I was younger. Definitely, yeah.
You reminded me now that you said Five Nights at Freddy's. I really am scaredy cat. I remember the first time I had heard of it, right? It's a very popular game, but I remember it got to a point where Five Nights at Freddy's, you could play it like on a web browser, right? And like a younger
Yeah.
cousin of mine was like, let's play it. When it was just I don't know, Sunday afternoon, there was nothing to do, and I was on my laptop, and we played it on a web browser, and it was like on the smallest screen ever. It wasn't even like full screen. And I was just like, well, this is not going to scare me, right? It's a small screen. We were just clicking. You have to look at all of the cameras before you get like jumped, right? So obviously I failed, and I got scared just by like the Freddy Fazbear jump scare. Even on that small screen, I was like, I can't take this.
I think the
So
Five
yeah,
Nights.
Five Nights at Freddy's is great. Yeah.
I feel like they hit a very like I don't know why because I also find them really scary, even though I'm not scared by many games anymore. I still find them really scary, and I think it's
Right.
because it's the tension that's being built up for so long, and it's so
Right.
the fear is almost having to replay it. It's not the jump scare because the jump scare's over and then it's fine. It's like I've got to do it again. Like
Right.
I've got to get to the end of the night.
Yeah.
Like that's scarier to me. It's the time commitment. Yeah. I really like the new one, like the 8-bit. It's not 8-bit, but like the old style Atari type game. It's really good. I was
Oh
really
yeah,
shocked by
I
how
saw
scary that
that.
one was. Yeah.
It's scary. Okay, I'm gonna try it.
It's like surprisingly scary. I thought it was like just gonna be kind of like fun, cutesy, a bit goofy. But I was playing it and I was like, it's tense.
Yeah, you know what? Like that's the thing with those 8-bit games. Because I wanted to mention earlier this year a game called Crow Country came out. I don't know if you saw it or heard of it, which is like it's a new game, but it has this PS1 aesthetic, right? And so you're like in an isometric point of view where you're like moving around and solving puzzles and like fighting these like little monsters, which like they're not that scary, right? But it still gets to me. Like the lore is really unsettling. It talks about like some sort of cosmic horror, and then like even when the monsters attack you, the screen gets red. Like it's this classic
Yeah.
way that the classic games did that. So even though the game in itself, like anybody can play it, it's not that scary. Like it sometimes when you play it too much, it kind of gets to you. You know what I mean?
I think sometimes the older graphics as
um,
well are quite unsettling. I think sometimes when a game is going for
yeah.
realism and they don't make it, they sit in this uncanny valley where nothing
Mm,
feels real, so nothing scares me. Whereas if you go for like a bit more of a stylized
mhm.
sort of thing, actually that freaks me out a bit more. Like the older I love the Resident Evil remakes. I think they're incredible. I love 4, like the 4 remake and the 4 original. I think they're both great. But when I think of like the
Yeah.
scariest Resident Evil game, it's the original 2 for me. Because the fixed camera angle, it gave you such little like visibility. You would walk through loading doors and just hope there was nothing there. It really I think that
Right.
sometimes the older graphics almost make it more scary. Maybe that's just because it was scarier because I was younger, but I remember being more scared than I was playing like 7 or 8, which are also really great and really scary, but not in the same way. Not in that same like unsettling feeling.
No, it's true. Like the tension that the monster designs, like you can really make them out too well. But like the music and like the classic horror, like there was this movie that talked about like some guys finding out like a game that was like cursed. Like if you played it, then you would die. Like it kind of feels that it gives that vibe,
Yeah,
that
like
it's
that you found something that
cursed
you
or
shouldn't
something
have.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the old school games bring it to the table. You mentioned Outlast, and something that I have a little bit of a problem with. I had it recently with Little Nightmares. Is that all the tension that is built up when you're like hiding or running
Mhm.
away from an enemy, and then they catch you, like all
It
of that tension
goes.
is released, like you're back to
Mm.
square one. Yeah, and then it can slowly become like into frustration, like, how much time
Mm.
have I spent on this level, right? So I think it has to be a sort of a very balanced approach to not be punishing to the player. Because I remember Outlast 2, which is the one I played. The scariest parts of that game were the parts of the school, right? Like the flashbacks or
When you're
something.
like going between,
Because
it shocked me every time.
yeah,
Not once was I like, oh, I'm about to go to the school. I'd go through a door and be like, oh, I'm here. Like, I hate this.
yeah, yeah, what do they call it? Like liminal spaces. Like there's, yeah, as you've been saying, like there's something very unsettling about like seeing a place that was like once full of life just be fully empty and clean, and strange sounds coming from wherever, and you're just like walking around just waiting to be like attacked, and you aren't attacked. Like sometimes you just hear sounds. Like that's the worst part of it.
Yeah, I think the difference to me, like the biggest difference between Outlast and Outlast 2 for me, is the difficulty. And I think that Outlast 2, it punishes you too much. It does exactly what you say. You get scared and you build up all this tension, and then you don't know where to go, and then you get killed, and then it's like, oh well, now I have to do that again, and it's just frustrating, and it's almost boring. You get to a point where you're just like, oh, I might as well die, and then I can work out where to go and then do it again. Whereas Outlast 1, because there's enough hiding places, it's a little bit easier, and that makes it scarier because you're dying less. As soon as you die, tension's gone. I've remembered it's not real. The whole time I'm alive, that's me. I'm gonna die. Like, it's way scarier.
Yeah, that first person perspective is really effective. And we'll talk of Resident Evil 7 later. But I was thinking, before the podcast, like which games, because I also started playing them, like when I was like late teens, early 20s, fully. I remember Slender: The Arrival on PS3, which I think is a game that does that in a really yes, I'm glad you played it, because I think it's compared to Outlast, it's a game that does it in a really brilliant way, right? Because I remember in the first area, there's this open woods that you have to collect like 8
well, it feels like the original
letters or something, right?
Yeah, it's like the original game where you had to collect the 10 pages, and then it turns into the extended version. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I like that because unlike Outlast, where, there's a pattern to the enemies in this place, like Slender Man will just appear out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And like kill you. Like it's
yeah,
there's something erratic about his behavior.
I think sometimes when I love a stalker enemy, and I think a stalker enemy is the scariest thing you can do in the game, like 100% of the time. But the randomness of suddenly just knowing something's behind you and not being able to track it, it's so uneasy. Because like in the real world, you can track everything. I know roughly where things are. I'm sure the cat's about to attack me from behind the sofa, but I know he's there, so it won't be that scary. Like if he could just teleport to different places, it would be so much scarier.
It is. It absolutely is. Yeah, like the fact that it's just like appearing unsettlingly from nowhere, when there's no pattern to follow. I think that like you got Resident Evil, of course, like great survival horror games, but you got Mr. X, right? That like when he appears out of nowhere, it's like, oh, you again, man. Like now you just gotta run around and like
I've got to go on like a weird loop. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that kind of takes off a little bit out of the tension of what a great video game does. But talking about Resident Evil, the best, I think, the scariest, I think that everybody can agree is 7, right? When do you remember when you played it?
Of the new ones, 7 is definitely the scariest. I've played 7 quite a few times. 7 and 8, apart from 4, 7 and 8 are my most replayed ones. I do really like them. I remember the first time I played 7, and you get to the bit where you're about to walk into the basement of the Baker house, and I just remember standing there staring at the door, and I was like, I'm gonna go and have a snack. I'm gonna have a snack, make myself a drink, and take some deep breaths, and then I'll come back to this. I'm not ready. It took me I probably came back a day later. I was like, I'm not doing it. I know it's just gonna upset me. I just don't think it's worth it. Yeah, it was
Yeah. Oh
very,
my god,
it
I
really
admire
freaked me
you.
out.
And you played it on your own, right? You didn't like play it with anybody.
No, I played it on my own. I try to play most horror games on my own for the first time. My only exception is like the Dark Pictures ones. I always play
Oh
them
yeah.
with a friend because I think the co-op makes it not as scary but more fun. But yeah, I played 7 on my
Indeed.
own for the
Yeah.
first time. I will say 7 is definitely the scariest. Like of the new ones, 100%. But the bit in 8 in
Yeah.
House Benevito where you're downstairs with the dolls,
Oh my god.
that
Yes.
is
Yeah. That's.
I played that bit, and I don't want to spoil what happens, but there is a bit where you turn a corner
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you see something monstrous, and that
Mm-hmm.
happened. I ran,
Mm-hmm.
I hid, I paused the game. I realized that I played it on release. I realized I'd started that game and played until that point, which is probably 7 or 8 hours in, depending on how you play. And I hadn't got up, I hadn't moved, I hadn't drunk water. I was like, and that happened, and it was such a shock,
Wow.
and I was so flooded with adrenaline. I was shaking, I couldn't hold my controller. I was like, I need to go and get something to eat and go to bed. I'm gonna finish this game tomorrow. I couldn't pick it back up that night. That scared me. That scared me more than I
Yeah.
think a game has scared me in a very long time. It got me.
Wow.
100% got me.
Yeah, I love that story. I'll tell you why. So I played Resident Evil 7 at a friend's house. I remember like I had slept the night before, like we hung out, like I think it was a Friday, and then on a Saturday morning, a friend of his just like lent him PS4 with the gold version of Resident Evil 7, and then like it was a rainy day, so he was kind of working, editing a video or something. So I was playing the whole time, and like because he was there, I wouldn't get as scared. But there would be moments, right? Because there's, as in all Resident Evil games, there's like some puzzles, and sometimes your mind just goes into like puzzle mode and kind of ignore the horrors at some
Yeah.
point. But then it gets to you. Like sometimes you just need to take a little break. So when I took those breaks, I'd be like, man, please just play for like a half hour or an hour. Like I need to take a break. Like it's like
I need to remember this isn't me. I need to remember that this is fictional.
I can't hold the controller like in the right way. I'm like shaking. And then I would take a break and then go back to it. But yeah, that moment in 8, as you said, like it's crazy because it's true. You go through the motions. You're right. Okay, yeah. Once you leave the house of the vampires, right?
Yeah, Lady
I don't
Dimitrescu.
remember
Yeah.
them. Yeah, Lady Dimitrescu. Yeah. Once you leave there, you're like, oh, okay, it's just like any other Resident Evil. You have to go to these 3 places, get these keys or whatever, and then continue. You like your video game mind kicks in, and then you go to House Beneviento, and you're like, what is this? What is this nightmare?
Yeah,
Like,
like there's loads of dolls, there's
oh
a
my god.
mannequin of my wife. I'm not happy. Like I'm not loving this. I don't Did you play the DLC for 8?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, the one with Rose, of course. Yeah,
Yeah,
I loved it. Yeah.
when you go back and you're like tiny and all the dolls are there. Like, the bit
Yeah.
the bit where you're walking through and the mannequins are like you have to keep looking
Yeah,
at
you have to
them.
look at it. You have to look at it.
That is probably I
Yeah.
remember playing that and I was just like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, am I actually having fun? I don't think I'm having fun. Like, this is horrible. It's
Yes.
so well done.
Yeah.
Like,
Did I?
it's so good.
Yeah. That is a very, very effective use of
Mm,
of tension because it's not a jump scare, right? It's, you got Alan Wake 2, which it's a survival horror game. But it just it kind of feels cheap in the end, right? Because like you're just walking around and then boom, it's a jump scare. You're like, whoa, like where did this come from? And then you
yeah.
have that mannequin section. As Rose in the Resident Evil 8 DLC, and it's, oh my god, like one of the, I think, did it come out last year? I think it was one of the like scariest moments of mine last year because like I don't want to spoil it, but there's a surprise, right? When you think you have it handled, there's something
Yeah.
else coming like
It is
from around the corner, and you're like, oh, I yeah.
it's the best use, I think, I've seen of a third person camera in a horror game where you're backing up
Mm-hmm.
and something approaches from the other direction and you have to sort of keep that third person, like keep it behind you, and you know that you're about to die, and you have to be so careful. It's an amazing use because usually sometimes third person, like, it does bring me out of it a bit. Like, I love Resident Evil 4, but sometimes the horror is missing because it's not for third person. It's not happening to me, like that's happening to Leon, so I don't need to worry. I'm safe. Leon's in danger. But actually with that, it was so effective because of the third person camera.
You remind me also like another game that was really effective also by, Shinji Mikami from RE4, The Evil Within. Right now they say the mechanics are a little dated. It's might be true, but something that really stick with me when I was thinking about like what will I talk about this game on the podcast, where like the monster designs and how they kill Sebastian in the game, right? Because even if it's in third person, like they really go above and beyond to like kill him in really gruesome ways.
Every single way, it's awful. You're like, oh great, a chainsaw through my face. Lovely. I think Evil Within was one of the games. I don't know if I ever finished it because I think I played it and I was quite new to horror, and I was like, I don't like it, too scary. I prefer to have a gun. I like.
An effective way, like two things, right? Like you got the gory kills where you're like, well, I don't want to go through that again, so I'll try to be more careful next time. And then it has these effective moments, which is, I think, a really great horror device where, you got your gun, your shotgun, like your crossbow and whatnot. And then you go through a sequence where, they take all these things away from you and you have to like hide in a closet. Oh my God.
Yeah, because
like, I think those moments are perfect.
You don't have any ammo, do you? So you just have to hide for the start.
Yeah, no, you don't have anything.
You build up all of this stuff, they took it away, and I was like, no, I'm not playing. You can't make me. Look, I got used to my guns. I'm not doing it anymore. I love it when a game does that. I love it when it takes you and makes you feel powerless. I know that it's not necessarily like a horror, but I think The Last of Us does that really well. Where you're playing as Joel and you build up all of your stats. You've used all like your pills, so your listen distance is really high, your max health is really high, and then there's a section where you play as Ellie, and you no longer have any of it. And even though it's not horror in like the traditional sense, that feeling of suddenly being so weak, it's really scary. To me, that is that gut feeling where it's like, oh, like I can't just beat up these people. I have to use stealth. I have to be clever. I can't brute force my way through anything. Like, I have to actually think about what I'm doing. Sometimes that is the scariest thing. Like, it's just that tiny switch into someone less powerful.
True. I think feeling that you're being like chased, right, and having to hide. I think that's one of the feelings that can really get to you and make you feel that sense of dread, right? That you're like when you have to, for example, like hold your breath, right, when the enemy's passing by. It's very unsettling. And then you have The Last of Us. There are some sequences where you're like in an abandoned house or something, and the enemies come from all directions. While it's like survival action, I guess, horror action, it can still be scary because sometimes they can appear from behind as well, and that's like that's something that you don't expect either.
Yeah, you'll just wander into a house and suddenly there's like 14 enemies, and it's like, oh great, thanks. I think that feeling of being
then you have
chased,
to use like all your weapons.
Yeah, so I just made this. I just crafted it. That feeling of being chased really got to me when I played the Little Nightmares games. They are they are horrors, definitely, but maybe not quite. I don't know. Maybe they are as scary, but they're a very different feeling because they do almost have like this quite like a juvenile play style. Like, you're playing a side scroller, you're playing something that is a little more, there's less going on, it's less complex. So I actually find that makes the scares really effective. Little Nightmares 2, the opening sequence when you're with the hunter and he's got his shotgun, that bit's like pretty scary, but the worst bit is the teacher with her neck. those bits I just couldn't play.
Yeah.
I was like, every time I had to hide somewhere and she would catch me, I was like, that's fine, you can catch me. Like, I wasn't made for this world.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Oh yeah, it's yeah. That is absolutely horrible. I remember playing the first Little Nightmares, with some friends, like in the background, and they got really, like, we all got really, well, not scared, but very weirded out by some of the enemies, and in Little Nightmares 2 as well, like the designs, the way they moved, right, like animalistic or something. It yeah, that's yeah, it keeps you up at night. Like, I remember, if like, sometimes you play a game and then you turn off the console and then you have to go, like, I don't know, to the kitchen, grab some food or whatever, and then, like, if you hear some sounds, like, you're gonna run back to your room.
What's behind me? Like, there's something's gonna get me. Yeah, I've definitely had that. I really like the Little Nightmares games, but Little Nightmares 2, I think, really got me, especially at the end when you sort of go into the TV world and there's a stalker enemy, and it really creeped me out. That stalker enemy really got to me.
Yeah, I think those games are really great, and reminded me another one that I wanted to mention. Bramble the Mountain King. I don't know if you heard of it, or if you played it last
I
year.
haven't played it, no.
It's, yeah, like, it plays similarly to Little Nightmares, and it's so funny because I'm pretty sure you can relate to this story. Like, you see a little bit of pictures and a gameplay trailer from an indie, and you're like, well, you requested, like, I want to play this, right? And then you're like, well, it's not going to be as scary, right? At least that's what I thought about Bramble. Because, like, at first you're in a meadow and with your sister, like, having fun with gnomes and whatnot, and then it turns out to be like a full-on nightmare scenario.
Yes, I've seen this.
Where,
it's compared to Limbo, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, those two are great. Yeah, Limbo and
Yeah.
Inside. Yeah, and then there's some. So, because I had to, like, I was working, my day job during the daytime, and at night before going to bed, I would, like, play it for the review. And I think those 3 nights that I played it before going to bed, I had nightmares while I was asleep, because there were some, like, witchcraft imagery, and some enemies were, any effective horror game, when they killed you, like, they showed you, like, how, like, what they did to the character, so you were like, oh my god, like, this is horrible. But yeah, I hate, like, I like it when games do that, right? Like, that they mess up your psyche so much that, like,
that you can't stop thinking about it. Yeah, I want to have to, like, mention this to my therapist. That's what I want from a horror game. Like, I love so you're saying about sometimes if a game kills you too often, it gets frustrating and it's no longer scary. Have you played the Supermassive games, like Until Dawn, Quarry, Dark Pictures? Have you played any of those where if you die, you're dead? Like, there's no coming back. That person's story is over. I think they're so fun.
Those are awesome games. Yeah.
I remember when the Quarry came out, and they had the Don't Breathe like mechanic.
Yeah.
I would hold my breath
with
as
the
well.
controller,
And, like, I'd just be there like join in, and then when you finally get to release it, like, I could never hit the next quick time event. I was like, I've got a lightheaded, hang on. I need to, like, breathe. But it was such a good mechanics. It's what you're doing. It's how scared you are. And I really like the Dark Pictures one where it's the heartbeat, where you have to press the button in time for the heartbeat, and then it speeds up. Oh my god, they are so difficult. Like, they are so tricky to get right. The amount of times I'd get a player killed, because they're quite often 2-player. The person I'm playing with would be like, "Great, thanks, idiot." I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm not very good at the heartbeats." Like,
yeah. Oh no.
Yeah, the game's just telling you keep
That's
calm.
so funny.
It's like, I can't.
Yeah, like, I'm gonna do exactly the opposite. I remember Until Dawn. I remember this game. I played it with a friend, and we almost got everybody alive by the end. But I made a silly mistake where, like, one of the characters was like, "Do you want to go to the left?" Where, like, oh, somebody's asking for help, or to the right, which was, like, the safe way to go. And, well, you can guess what happened then. But so 7 characters almost, like, made it out alive in the end. But I was really nervous because they make you do that that Don't Breathe
Keep
section
still.
like several times. Yeah, I was really immersed in that way. I was like, just as you said, like I wasn't breathing, and my friend was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Shut up, man!
Don't
I'm
talk to
I'm
me.
concentrating."
Yeah, I played that and I was trying to do my like no deaths run where I save everyone, and I got to the end sequence where you
Mhm.
have like 3 dope moves in a row. So I just put my controller down and I was
Oh,
like, I'm
yeah.
just gonna put it down and it's just gonna be okay. My cat came over and just knocked it off the side. I was like, great. Well, now I have to replay the whole game. 'Cause those saves, there's
No.
no room for error. Like once you die, you're dead. You have
Yeah.
to replay the game from the beginning. So I've never got that achievement. I was like,
True.
that's fine. I don't need all of them. The
No.
cat decided.
Yeah.
But yeah,
The cat decided to.
yeah. The cat was like, no, you don't need this one.
And going back to the Dark Pictures anthology, I've also been able to play all of them with friends, which is it's great. Like the stories, of course, some are based on like Saw or like 80s horror movies,
I think actually
but
the stories are the weakest part. Like quite often the stories I'm like, oh,
yeah.
that was okay, but like they're nothing
Mhm.
revolutionary. But the gameplay is
Right.
what's really good.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, like, how do you go about playing these games? Because I think in none of the games, in my case, I've been able to make them all survive in the end. So I always try to be super careful, right? And there's always some obvious choice that I'm too invested in the story or in the plot that I don't see. It's quite obvious that if I choose the wrong decision, one of them's gonna die. And once I go past that point, it's usually in the third act. I'm just like, you know what? Whatever. All
Who
bets are off.
cares?
Who lives
Like
lives, right? Yes, like
we the most
yeah.
recent one, I can't remember the name of it. The one where
The
you're in
devil
like
in me, yeah.
yes, the devil in me, that's it. We the H Holmes one, I played with a friend and we play all of them together on release day. That is just what we always do and that's how we
Awesome.
like playing them. And we 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 got to right at the end and there's a bit where it doesn't matter how many people
Uh-huh.
you have alive, this bit always happens. But you're on a boat. And I thought that meant
Yeah.
game done. I thought I was done playing. I put my controller down to watch the final cutscene. I was like, oh, thank God, we kept everyone
Hmm.
alive. Controller down, lean back, I'm ready to go. As that happened, I had a quick time event. Obviously, I missed it because I fumbled the controller trying to pick it up. I got 2 people killed in about 30
Hmm.
seconds. My friend was livid. She was so
No.
mad at me. She was like, "This is unforgivable. We're never playing these again." But yeah, it completely
Yeah.
got me. I was like, "We're at the end, right?"
Yeah, that last sequence in in The Devil in Me, I was like,
Mm.
well, a few of them survived. That's fine, like not all of them make it in the end when I
Yeah, no
play
one's
them. And
perfect.
then yeah, and then that scene happens and I'm like, "Oh no." Like
Yeah, like great. I got
and
more
then
of them killed.
yeah, like I fully messed it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also I remember like because you know how in like I don't know, some certain horror movies, like there's no hope left. And
Mm.
you're like, nobody's gonna make it out of this, right? And eventually maybe, the final girl or somebody does. But I remember on the House of Ashes one, right? The one where they're
In the
in like this
caves.
catacombs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the caves, yeah. And they go deeper and deeper. And it came to a point where I was like, you know what? I don't think anybody's gonna make it out of this.
Yeah.
Like they were all alive, but
I played
like looking at the situation.
I played that one, and I think that one might be my favorite. I go between that and Devil in Me as my favorite, but I think it's probably House of Ashes. I
Hmm.
think it's the best one. And I remember playing it, and you get to a point where 2 of your characters can, if they're still alive at this point, can sort of like go
Hmm.
into a city of some kind to plant
Uh-huh.
explosives. And I remember playing it, and I was like, well, if it gives me the choice to do this, I'm not going to do it. the game didn't give me the choice. It's like, no, they're in there now escape. And I was like, oh, okay, so they made this choice on their own. I wasn't involved in it. I would have just left. Like, I don't care what's happening. They can live here. That's none of my business. And I do like as well that with those games, when you play as your two, like the two people who open it, they always, no matter what, they always both die. And I really enjoyed how the Quarry played with that expectation, where as soon as the game opens, I'm like, I don't care about these two people. They're definitely gonna die. Doesn't matter. And then with the Quarry, obviously, they play with that a little bit, and it's very interesting. I thought
the
really
Quarry
well
was great. I remember I played it. Yeah, because see, that's one thing that, now we're like an informed audience, so to speak. You get to stick the landing in the ending, in any horror story, games or movies. Like it's always really hard, because it has to leave you not safe, right? It has to leave you hanging in some way, like the nightmare is not over kind of scenario, right? And the Quarry does some really great. I mean, it has a lot of endings, right? And I, now that you remind me, I messed it up, that one as well. I was like, well, do you want to forgive this person or do you want to kill it? And I'm like, no, we gotta forgive. And then that wasn't the right choice.
Like,
but
the best character in the game is like, no, we should do the right thing. And I was like, well, I'm gonna listen to her. She knows what's up. She was wrong. I was so angry. I was so mad. I was like, great, okay, so you tricked me. Like, I was livid at that. Because I thought the obvious was, like, we're kind of talking around it, but like I kind of thought the obvious choice was what you had to do. And then this character who throughout the whole thing, she has been like the most sensible, the most level-headed person. She was like, I don't think we should do this. And I was like, well, I'm listening to her. Because the obvious choice clearly is the wrong choice. And she's the right choice. And I called its bluff and I was wrong. And it's really annoying.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's very similar to what happened in my case.
I think the best choice you get in the Quarry is, I can't remember any of their names, but it's when you're playing as like the blonde girl who she's the one who's like the vlogger. I can't remember her name, but she goes up into the into this treehouse, and you hear a thud in the attic, and she's like, "Should I open the trap door to my certain death, or should I look through the bags?" And I was just like, "Well, I'm gonna open the trap doors to my certain death. Like, that's a fun little joke." Nope, that's not the right choice. Can confirm, not great. But yeah, I think the Quarry was great because obviously it's the same team as Dark Pictures. And if you haven't played Dark Pictures and you just played Until Dawn, then the Quarry, I actually think you'd have a really different experience. Because if you've played all the Dark Pictures, you know, like, the tricks, and you know what to look out for, and you know what's going to get you. But then it just called our bluff, and apparently we both fell for it. So maybe not playing the Dark Pictures is the way to go. Maybe you make better choices. But yeah, I think their games are great.
I like that. Yeah,
I do.
I like that they keep you on your toes. And as you said, that thing in the attic also got my character when I played it. I was like, this is too obvious.
Yeah,
she's not gonna like die, right? Like, this is not foreshadowing. Like, we're too smart for that. And then
this is just a funny joke, and we're all in on it. And then the game was like, no, it's not. She's dead now. Yeah. I loved the Quarry. I thought it was amazing.
Oh my god!
But I wish that I don't want to spoil what the monster is, but I wish that they looked different. I feel like they look too much like the creatures in Until Dawn. They look nearly the same. And I think one thing that's really...
Oh yeah, the Wendigos, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the ones in the Quarry, they had like the opportunity to play with like very like pointed, elongated features, which we've never seen Supermassive do. Like, we've never seen them like go more animalistic with their creatures. I guess apart from in one in the caves. I've already forgotten what it's called. What's the one in the caves called? The Dark Pictures?
House of Ashes, was it?
Yes, yeah. Like, that's when we've seen them go like the most animalistic. And I think that it's a really scary image. Like, that is like my one complaint with the quarry is I wish that the creatures were scarier. Like, or maybe not, because I think they do look quite freaky, but I wish they looked more like animalistic and they had like more like pointed features. Because to me, I was like, oh, it's just Wendigos 2.0.
True.
And that was a bit boring for me. Not boring, but they could have just done more. Expected more from them.
Yeah.
I'm like a disappointed teacher.
No, it's absolutely right. You're right. You reminded me. I forgot to mention like the Spider Woman in The Evil Within. I think that when a good monster design, comes out in any piece of media, like the Alien from the Alien movies. It like transcends its source material and it just becomes part of popular culture. And I think that a lot of people know about the Spider Woman from Evil Within. So anytime that like you
Pyramid Head
like create a
from...
monster or something.
Yeah, like Pyramid Head
Oh
from
yeah,
Silent Hill.
of course, yeah.
I know people who haven't played Silent Hill and they know what Pyramid Head looks like, and like they don't know what he is or what he does or anything. They're just like, oh yeah, that's Pyramid Head. Because it kind of goes beyond just what it is. And I think that they really could have done that with the quarry. I think it could have been really, really scary monsters. And instead, like they're freaky. They're a bit... I don't like their face. I don't like their mouths. It's weird. But they're not... I don't lay awake at night and think about them, They're a bit meh to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you... I mean, it's not like the teacher's neck in Little Nightmares 2. Well, I think about that probably every day. Like, that's the most horrifying thing ever. But that's what you want. Like, you want people to be laying awake at night, unable to sleep. Traumatized. Yeah. I think that's going to be my new, is a game scary enough? Did I have to bring it up to a therapist? Yes or no? That's going to be how I tell if it's scary.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Yeah. This really has been like a fantastic chat. I love your umbrella shirt, right, from Resident Evil, right? Which also has some really iconic monsters, Yeah, the guy who says stars, right, from Resident Evil 3 what was his name?
Nemesis.
Yeah, another iconic one.
Yeah,
Nemesis. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I like
it's one of those instantly recognizable ones. Yeah,
and I like that they have different forms. That's something I really like in Resident Evil, where you fight them again and again, and each time they look different and scarier and things like that. I think that's really fun. I wish that in 8 you had to fight multiple of the bosses at once. I kind of wish they'd come back again. I think that's where they kind of missed from Resident Evil 8. Like, if you had to fight Lady Demetress and Heisenberg at once, that would have been amazing. But also really difficult, and I'm glad they didn't have to do that.
Yeah, because I remember in 7 you had this ending, right, where the mutated thing was like hunting you, and in the end it was like the whole house against you or something like that. And
yeah, it felt like the house was attacking you.
Yeah, going back to like how to stick the landing with a great ending.
Yeah.
All right. Well, oh my God, I don't want to take any more of your time. Thanks a lot for hanging out. I'm excited now. Like it's October and I haven't really played any scary games yet. Yeah, now like I'm waiting, as I said, for my copy of Silent Hill 2, the remake, which I'm glad it turned out great. But anyway, your reviews are great. I forgot to say.
Thank you.
And where can people find you? Yeah, I just wanted to plug that in. Where can people find you on social media?
I've got reviews on GamesCreed and Feed, both under Mary the Deadman, and then all my socials are Mariella Dead. So yeah.
All right. Great. Yeah, I'll add it on the description. But yeah, thanks a lot for hanging out.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for listening.